Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with StraightSmile Solutions, StraightSmileSolutions.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about something that's probably a little overdue, but now that I'm starting to get a lot more doctors who are starting to do straight wire since we launched our digital straight wire course, um, eventually brackets are going to break, right? It's just kind of par for course. It's going to come with anytime you do straight wire or braces, kids, adults, sometimes there's going to be random broken brackets. And the occasional one here and there is not a problem, but if it's chronic, it's really going to slow down the treatment and or completely stall the treatment. You're going to be spinning your wheels. So it's really important that you learn to understand the why behind bracket breakage. Is it things you need to improve on your end? Is it the things that the patient needs to improve on their end? If it's chronically a patient problem, then it sounds like your team probably isn't, or you aren't, talking about compliance and what's expected of them and what they can do and not do, right? So anyways, we could probably talk about all this today for like a good 30 minutes, but I just wanted to talk about a few high level points in terms of understanding the why behind the bracket breakage. So the first thing I do is I generally have a 24-hour window. So I let patients know whenever I put brackets on or put a new bracket on that, hey, if you have any problems with this bracket, any breakage, in the next 24 hours, I need you to give me our office a call immediately. I need to know. You need to report it within 24 hours because any breakage within 24 hours is probably on your end, something you did wrong. We can go over all those points. And that's a problem. If your team or you is having breakage, you got to identify what the problem is because it's going to keep happening if you don't fix it. So I would want to know. And any phone call that you get beyond that 24-hour point is now most likely the problem of the patient. It's something the patient's doing wrong. And remember, if a lot of patients are doing things wrong, it's your policy, your compliance policy, and everything like that you need to work on because, that still isn't normal. But in any case, so let's go over beyond the 24-hour thing. So let's say whether it's pre 24 hours or post 24 hours. The next question I'm going to ask once I need to know when it happened, I want to know how it happened. So they may have, some feedback. Oh yeah, sometimes they'll straight out say, yeah, sorry, I was eating a taco, okay, problem solved. But if they're like, gee, I don't know, it just happened, then that's where you need to dig into it a little bit more. And then you need to ask to see the bracket. So actually have the patient bring the bracket in when obviously, if they broke a bracket, you want to reuse that bracket so you can save money. So you want them to make sure they save it. But you can ask them on the phone, hey, can you turn your bracket over? Do you have it in your hand? Can you tell me a little bit, is the glue on the back of the bracket or is the glue still on the tooth or both? And the answer to that question will pretty much tell you which direction. Now, I would make sure you don't tell the patient this kind of cheat sheet because then they're going to just say whatever they want to say, right? Because they're going to learn. But so let's start with glue on tooth because that's a little bit easier. If all the glue is on the tooth and the patient feels it feels lumpy and bumpy on the tooth, and they look at the bracket that they saved and there's no glue on the bracket, that makes it pretty easy to isolate what happened. So usually in that case, if there's glue on the tooth and not on the bracket, then that means that could be a light cure issue. That's always an issue. Like if you have a light cure, sometimes they start, dying out, and they need calibration or you need to replace it. And you can still see light, and if it's not the right power, or whatever intensity, then you can have breakage and you wouldn't even know. So that's always an issue. You should always keep an eye on light calibration, especially if you're using one consistent light. Or even if you're using more than one. Okay. Number 2 could be you use too heavy of a wire. Like it was really displaced and you tried to put in a 16. Yeah, it may not break the second you tie it in, but it might break later that night or the next day. And if so, that was you. Number 3, someone could have been like a little heavy-handed at tie-in, a little too much force, a little too rough. Sometimes it won't ping off that very second. It'll ping off a few hours later. Of course, patient diet compliance is usually the main thing. Usually in this situation, it's something they ate, or they got, trauma, they got hit, something like that. They bumped, they fell. Or it could be a bite interference where the way the brackets go on for ideal, a tooth is hitting a bracket. And again, these are things you have to check, but you have to check excursive or extrusive movements as well. So those are all pretty much things that you did wrong or the patient did wrong. So either way, and you can kind of ask leading questions, but if they're super adamant, I have no idea how this happened, it just happened, then be thinking the other ones. Okay, so let's go to the one that's a little more difficult, which is where the glue is still on the bracket, not at all on the tooth. Tooth feels flush, nothing on it. In that case, it's still probably something you did. So it could be improperly etching, the duration, the stuff's contaminated, it could be isolation, there's blood, there's plaque, there's there's saliva, you're not using like a Nola or something. What else? Sometimes it's happened to me before that an assistant to prep uses like the little normal Profi cups, but those have like oils in them. So that will prevent it. So you don't want to use that. If you need to prep first, I would just use plain pumice and water. Mix it up yourself. They sell some cups like that. Or just use a dry toothbrush. That's totally fine. Or anything like that. Also, even toothpaste before bonding can cause that problem, or using AC or Listerine or something like that. Also, whitening too close to your bonding appointment. That's another thing. Obviously, priming, we talked about that, or the primer gets contaminated. So you have to read the directions on the primer carefully, because some primers have to be air dried, air thinned, or light cured. So make sure you're using the right one. And if your team has worked in other offices, or if you change brands, they may not understand that. Of course, light curing improperly, there's 20-second lights, 40-second lights, 10-second lights, 3-second lights, and the calibration can be off too. So just making sure you're getting it from all different angles and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So many things, over time, eventually you'll learn to be able to figure these things out and improve things on your own. All right. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at StraightSmileSolutions.com.